أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. Say, He is Allah, the One, Allah the Eternal Refuge. He neither begets nor is born, nor is there to Him any equivalent. Sadaqallahu lazim. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. الحمد لله. الصلاة والسلام على رسول النبي الكريم وعلى آله أصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد. Thank you very much for joining us today for this beautiful session. We'll be starting in from 5 minutes from now. Let me just give you a brief introduction to TAIF. TAIF Digital Institute is created to lead the way through a new age approach of training and awareness of Islamic finance. TAIF is providing an end-to-end digital learning solution to Islamic banks, Islamic finance institutions by combining the knowledge of Islamic finance and technology and presenting it to the masses of the Ummah. TAIF offers to make Islamic banking and finance to the world as a commercially viable solution by digitizing it and making it available to all. Today's session is a very unique session. People who are going to be the leader of the Islamic finance industry will be joining and listening and getting benefit from the session. The growing demand and limited supply of digital talent are placing immense pressure on Islamic finance institutions to scale up on their digital skill and hunt for the right talent. Today, we have invited a well-known name of Islamic finance and finance industry, Dr. Mughis Shaukat. With a unique personality, he has influence in the industry and he himself had become a trademark. Let me try to put some light on his achievement. Dr. Mughis is global finance, Islamic finance strategist, policy advisor, fintech specialist, MIT USA, and pioneer head of Islamic finance under Central Bank of Oman. He is a thought leader, an author, a renowned public speaker, and prominent contributor to local and global policy and strategy affairs. Under his speaker and prominent contribution in local and global policy and strategic affairs, he have won GIFA awards by the President of Islamic Republic of Pakistan. He has also awarded as Fintech Leader of the Year 2020 by Turkey and features on the cover of top international financial magazines, able personality, strategy, and thought leader. MashaAllah, he has a lot of achievements. In between those achievements, I would like to highlight that he is also the Vice Chairman of IOFI Education Board, Bahrain, Society of Advancement of Socio-Economic Trends, member of the Western Economic Association, International, USA member, International Select Expert Panel, Central Bank of Bahrain, Islamic Profit Rate, Benchmark member of Blockchain Society, Oman, and Certified Sharia Advisor and Auditor. There is a limitless thing I can say about him. His achievements are lightning and we have seen all over. So without further ado, I would ask him to come on the stage. With that, I will ask to give some opening remark by our CEO, Mr. Ziaullah Siddiqui, and start the session.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. As-salatu was-salamu ala rasulih al-Nabi al-Kareem wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajmain. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much all. It's a pleasure and honor to have you again on this 25th webinar being conducted by TAIF Digital Institute. Alhamdulillah, with this webinar, we have been able to actually convey the message of Islamic finance through these webinars to around 3,500 people. This is the 25th webinar that we are conducting. And it's a great pleasure and honor for me that the guest today that we have and the topic that we have that he has agreed on a very short notice to actually deliver his enlightening lecture on it. Uh, Brother Mughis Shaukat is, as Ehsan mentioned, he's one of the thinkers and shapers of Islamic finance, one of the key and the leading names in Islamic finance industry. And this is really a privilege and honor for us that he very kindly accepted our invitation to be here with us. He had been extremely kind and extremely supportive of TAIF initiative since we started. We have had a few interactions with him, and every time we ended up learning so many things from him. And in terms of his introduction, I think if I start reading the citations, we will need like maybe several hours explaining his achievements and his work that he has done in the field of Islamic finance. So uh, thank you very much, Brother Mughis. We welcome you on behalf of I welcome you on behalf of myself, on behalf of Taif team, and on behalf of all the audience that is attending today to accept for accepting this invitation and for being here at such a short notice. Thank you very much, brother. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thank you. And I
Walaikum
invite
salam.
you,
Yeah.
and with this, I hand over the mic to you, brother. So we are all yours, listening to you.
Thank you very much, my brother Ziaullah, and to our brother Hassan as well. I used to pronounce him Hassan, just learned that he's Hassan, I'm guessing. Uh, Hassan, I mean, and Zia and Team Taif, deeply honored, privileged. Thank you very much for, first of all, coming up with this topic, because to me, as we were discussing even prior to the session, this is an extremely crucial topic, least discussed in this formal fashion. And I love the opportunity, of course. Thank you very much for that introduction. I mean, I did not know that my introduction can span on to hours and hours of citations. So that itself is a huge honor to have somebody of the level and the scale of Zia Saab, introduce me and then have me contribute to this beautiful platform that Taif is. I mean, it's a fast up and coming platform. It is very promising. I don't know how much people in this audience are privy to Taif's initiatives and the platform itself, but it is one for the reckoning. That I can say for sure. And the stuff that they are doing is very new age, kind of ahead of the curve stuff that you guys are doing. And of course, my support theoretically, practically, wherever you think I'm worthy of assistance, folks in Taif, I would be there. And this version or this session that we are co-jointly arranging is one evidence of my available support to Taif's initiative. And these are initiatives that relate all of us. And I think that these are mutual efforts, and hence the mutual benefits and the mutual gains. And may Allah help us in materializing all. I would, I mean, as I mentioned, this is an extremely crucial topic. Let me just very quickly share my some piece of slides that I have. Normally I don't do slides. I'm somebody who likes talking heart eye to eye, but since we are in this online version of affairs that has encompassed the global world, particularly after the COVID scenario, slides are more handy than what they were before. Now, as you could rightly see from the slides, that this is what the topic is, an extremely crucial topic, because you see, I mean, we discuss a number of items with regard to Islamic economics and finance, a number of angles, a number of discussion moot points world over are being discussed in developing Islamic economics and finance. But what I believe is least discussed crucially in a very formal fashion, in a very solo version, as the main theme of the whole activity has always been, a rare occurrence, uh, which is very unjustifiable, because this is the topics of all topics. This is the mother of all topics, the theme itself. So I think, due attention has to be given to this topic, and credit to Taif that they have highlighted this area, and then hit the nail on the head when they asked me to do and deliver a session on this topic. So this is an extremely crucial topic. You understand this, you understand the current status as well as the future trajectory of Islamic finance, and then you can even maneuver that by looking at the intricacies that what we are going to discuss. So first thing first, before I start the formal discussion, I want to, at the very outset, recognize that COVID-19 catastrophe and the human costs that the world is facing. It's unprecedented, devastating. Over the last 100 odd years, the world has not seen this before. It is still there. It is still as menacing. Countries are facing second or third waves already, and my deepest sympathies as a result to those who have been affected and who have suffered, who have lost their loved ones. Whatever can be said is not equal to this the pain of loss or the suffering that people are and have gone through. But at the same time, profound appreciations to all the frontline health workers and all the people who are involved, from the government to non-government organization, the whole policy orientation, the way they are trying to rescue us from this menace ASAP, and not only trying to rescue us, but to fight this menace at all, once and for all. So appreciation to them, and we hope and pray that we are done and dusted. This menace, this pandemic is done and dusted sooner than later, and things can go back to normal much faster than expected.
Doctor, Assalamu alaikum, doctor. Doctor, one thing I just want to say that there are already a couple of raised hands. You can people can ask questions in between the slides as well.
Yeah, sure. This is what I wanted to say, that normally folks who have been into my earlier sessions or other sessions, they would know that I do not prefer giving monologues. It's much easier for me to give monologues, but my sessions, I name them as discussion, as a group discussion sessions, where all the participants, including myself, discuss the topic through. And in doing so, I'm happy to take questions every now and then. Do not wait for me to finish up the material that I have on offer and then start the Q&A, although this is the normal trajectory of such sessions, which is the style right now today too. But the tweaking is that, I want to make it like a coffee table discussion, like a chit chat, discussing a topic. I can see some, hands are being raised, and feel free when you want to ask any question, any clarity that I would be worthy of, providing within the session itself. Let's have this discussion group going from the word go, is what I'm saying. As there you go. Okay, so are there any questions to start with, or I can just start?
No, I think you start, and then as and when we when you reach somewhere, then maybe we can have a break. Fantastic. And then we can ask questions.
Hassan can keep an eye on that. Hassan, just stop me if there is any question. Just intervene, and then we'll answer them accordingly.
Sure.
I'm also watching. Don't worry. Thank you.
Cool. So you see, as I mentioned, this is such an important topic, and highlighting the human capital gap, and of course the available future or present career opportunities, Islamic finance. People are not too much aware of this. I'll explain why this topic becomes so much crucial, because what we have seen over the years, over at least the last 30-40 years, that Islamic finance has gained a lot of traction. And when I say this slide itself is enough. Look at this traction going on. This is starting from 1980s, 60s till straight away in 2020 onwards. This is the level of spanning and the traction Islamic finance has gained world over. Although it is not the talk of the global town, but at least it is talk of the regional towns or certain country towns. It is gaining prominence. It is a little over 2.2 trillion already, although which I still think is an understatement given the potency available of Islamic finance. There are over 100 or 600 Islamic financial institutions operating in 75 countries. Sukuk is a massive product alongside Islamic banks that is delivering towards Islamic finance projection and Islamic finance promotion and efficacy and available. So this is the overall Islamic finance. And Islamic finance right now, as compared to, for example, 10 or 20 years ago, when you talk about Islamic finance, a little more financial people per se are more familiar with this industry than what it was before. And having said that, you know, I mean, to reach this status, to reach this this mileage, or to reach this point where right now you are projecting another 5 years and an over $3 trillion of market, that's only Islamic finance I'm talking about. It has not been easy. Islamic finance had to operate in or navigate in rough seas. You know, remember, when you talk about Islamic finance and you talk about the promotion, projection, and performance of Islamic finance, it's envisaged to be over 3 trillion in the next 5 years. And the contributions that the industry has made, although there are some criticism, although there is some, you know, I mean, some perception issues and whatnot, but remember, sometimes what happens is people who are proponents of Islamic finance, people who want Islamic finance to prosper, people who are advocates of Islamic finance, particularly in the regions that Islamic finance is among the center stage of the financial industry, guys, they become, you know, too idealistic. They lose track of the reality that Islamic financial system, be it banking, sukuk, or whatever are the components, including takaful, which is also one of the least talked about areas as compared to the other items of Islamic finance, is something that, you know, I mean, is operating in absolutely rough shores or rough seas. People lose track of the reality and, you know, become too idealistic, if not over idealistic. They want everything to be perfect about Islamic finance. You know, whenever I go and speak in global events or even in sessions that relates to similar topics, which is such a basic mother of all topics, this should be talked more about. And again, credit to Ty for coming up with this and making it the focal topic. You know, people become too idealistic. I mean, you have to realize that you are trying to first rejuvenate and then operate and future grow Islamic finance in a system that is not Islamic finance friendly, in an environment that is not only against or not suitable to Islamic finance, but oftentimes it is very hostile to Islamic finance. And you're not talking about only operational mechanics in the system. You're not talking about only the legal or other dimensions of the system. You're also talking about the understanding and the general public mass perception about the system too. So believe you me, I mean, to be an Islamic banker or to be an Islamic finance expert or to be an Islamic finance proponent even, or to be in any stakeholder of Islamic finance, when you have to operate in such a hostile, such a non-user friendly, such a alien environment to Islamic finance in every way, and then expect ideal results from Islamic finance model wise and operation wise and objectives wise and objective fulfillment wise, there is this huge structure and objective mismatch that people do not realize. And when they don't realize, and then they expect idealism from Islamic finance, they lose track of the whole notion of Islamic finance. And this creates the umbilical cord for a necessary, but more oftentimes unnecessary criticism. Believe you me, guys, if you think you are good at swimming and I tie up your hands and then ask you, I want to judge how good you swim, and then you fail to swim because your hands are tied up. Or if you're good at swimming, but I want to judge you that, okay, you're good at swimming, but let me see how good you are at climbing a tree. So definitely you will perform non-ideally. And I'm expecting ideal results. So if I want you to see how good you are at swimming, I have to give you a proper swimming environment. I have to give you a proper ecosystem that not only enables you, but thrives you to perform well the way I want, even better. So this is the problem with the Islamic financial system, is that, man, oh man, it is 2.3 trillion. Yes, it is 40 years old, but still, you know, projected to be over $3 trillion of financial share in the global financial arena, although still small. But boy, oh boy, you need to give these folks a lot of credit, all the stakeholders, Sharia scholars, practitioners, academicians, and whoever are related directly to Islamic finance, even the customers too, that alongside these rough seas, alongside this stormy environmental, anti-hostile Islamic financial environmental weather in every facet, you are still surviving. You are still talk of the town, at least at the regional level. You are still growing. Projections are very positive. Even in pandemic times, let alone the global financial crisis times, Islamic finance is still less affected. I haven't heard a single story or a half a story of an Islamic bank collapsing because of these externalities like the pandemic, COVID. You're still healthy. Your liquidity measures are still there. You are much more stable. Basel 3, even you're ready for Basel 4 or Basel 5 per se. So to be in that state and to be in that status, be when you're facing challenges of that you don't have a level playing field, as I've mentioned. There is edifice of structural, institutional, administrative, fiscal, non-fiscal, and legal means that is favoring the other system rather than the Islamic financial system. Man, oh man, this is tough. IFEs lack long-term, low-risk liquidity instruments corresponding to, I mean, all of these. And third, of course, you know, I mean, the legal jurisdictic and Islamic contract hostility towards understanding Islamic finance. For example, some countries apply certain contracts while the other countries in the same region ban the same contracts. Tawarruk is a classic example. So Sharia standardization, Sharia harmonization, then the other nomenclatures, ethical financing, don't call it Islamic financing, call it socially responsible financing, call it with the other any nomenclature, marketing issues, understanding issues, and stuff like that. This is a whole plethora of issues that Islamic finance is and challenges that Islamic finance is facing, and yet it is growing at a reasonable state, so much so that it is still alive. It's still alive, and any other system that that didn't have to do with the Islamic norms might as well have, you know, I mean, shifted gears or became converted itself into a new version, if not, you know, completely collapsed. So credit is very much due to all the players of the industry, be it in whatever capacity, to bring a system in 2021 where we are still talking that yes, we have a system, so we accept acceptability there, that there is something called as an Islamic financial system. Of course, there is a huge room for development, and we will see what is the root cause that will lead to that development, or the root instrument that will lead to that ideal development. But again, these topics become much more crucial because the constraints, these constraints that I've just mentioned, form the bedrock of the resultant mass perception, rendering Islamic financial operations reminiscent to conventional practices. I mean, if you talk even to a taxi driver, and if you talk about Islamic finance, I mean, and you see what is the difference, so more or less the response would be that it is quite same, because you pick up your ear from here or you pick it up from your hair, it's all the same, there is no difference. So there are huge perception issues, which is the result of the challenges that Islamic finance is operating in, and very understandable. So if you want to take Islamic finance forward in a much more developed fashion, where it sort of neutralizes some of the criticism, right or wrong, I mean, some of the criticism is right, some of the criticism is unnecessary, because people you know, do not understand the realities at ground. I mean, it's easier said than done. As I mentioned, when you don't have the ecosystem that is made for you, and yet people ask you to operate in an ideal way, this is never going to happen. And then you face and criticize Islamic finance. This is very unwarranted and uncalled for. Having said that, there is some of the criticism is, you know, I mean, is fine. And what I'm going to tell you about is that why we have those criticism, because there are some actual root causes for that criticism. Now, remember, when we are going to talk about Islamic finance and how it's going to neutralize its criticism, the only way it can neutralize its criticism, or it can live up to its, or try and live up to its ideal paradigms or the ideal perception, is that if it understands itself inside and out, if it understands that the question right now is no more trying to announce Islamic finance and cementing itself as it's a system to stay. The question is no more, that phase is over already. People took 30, 40 years to cement this phase, where now people talk about Islamic finance as if it's not an experimental system, it is a system that is there to stay. Now the phase is that if Islamic financial system is there to stay, remember, operating in all of these constraints and challenges and criticism galore, if it is going to stay, this is no more the question, But then the new phase of the question is that, is it going to be sustainable? Yes, it is. It is there to stay. It has seen all the weathers. It is still facing a rough shores. But is it going to be sustainable? More so, particularly in times of pandemics, particularly at times of oil glitches. Remember, one of the things that Islamic finance is often related to is the fact that it is also referred to as a system that boomed itself because of petrodollar or because of the oil market galore. So sometimes, there is another way of seeing the growth of Islamic finance, that the system was supposed to grow. It's not because it's inherently growable or inherently stable to grow, but because it was backed by oil-rich countries and petrodollar, or the black gold as they call it, and that black gold went to the deposits of Islamic banks. That black gold went to the issuance of sukuks and all this, and this has some credibility. And this is why the efficacy, the sustainability of Islamic finance becomes much more crucial, because once you have put the system in a position that it is going to stay, it is there to stay. Now the people, anti or non-anti-Islamic finance, look at Islamic finance. Okay, so if you have enabled it to stay, then let us see if it is sustainable. Let us see if you take out the plug of oil dollars funded. Let us see if you are able to operate in a pandemic-driven environment, or let us see if you are able to operate in a new age, new normal, new probability frontiers-led dynamics of the global arena. Would you be able to still sustain or not? So what's happening right now is that you're not only facing old plus new challenges, perception issues, but you're also now have another expectation on your shoulders from non-proponent to proponents of Islamic finance, that now they want to look at you. Now you are here to stay, but are you going to be sustainable vis-a-vis the new developments in the world, pandemic included? And not only pandemic, guys. This is a world that is also driven by fintech, technology disruption. This is a world that is fast, if not already moved to a version which is where the global, it was called global village. Now it has become a global hut because of this technology advancement. Fintech is one way of referring to that technology environment. This is a world that is oriented through UN SDGs that we have all so signatories of, over 157 countries, including Oman, where I am based, is a signatory of. And this is a world that is going to face the havoc of green swans, i.e. climate change issues, where risk management is going to be different. So you're not only going to face a world that is prone to cybersecurity risks, you're also going to operate an Islamic financial system that is now going to face climate change risks that are unforeseen in nature. Physical risks, yes, you can foresee, natural disasters and all that, but transition risks of climate refugees, and of course, on top of it, the new COVID, economic-driven COVID risks with that. So to have Islamic finance operate in an already constrained environment where the system is never in support of you, and then to be in to reach a position magically, to be honest, to qualify yourself as a over $3 trillion market in the next 5 years, and then to have this extra burden on you that people say, okay, you're here to stay now, but let us see how if you are able to sustain yourself given this new normals of the world, including the pandemic, including financial technology disruption, including SDGs fulfillment, including the green swans of climate change. So these are those things, guys, that Islamic finance has to operate, not only trying to address its old or current issues and operating in a old or current hostile environment ecosystem-wise, or a non-user-friendly environment ecosystem-wise. It has to address at the same time, not one after another. Simultaneously, it has to address its new expectation in a much more jiddan, or a much more vociferous or a new age fashion for it to operate in a sustainable manner in times of COVID pandemic or post-COVID pandemic, in times of financial technology disruption or technology disruption, in times of SDGs fulfillment, and in times of climate change, which is the most important thing. And guess what? All of this, when the world is craving for an anti-fragile economic system, all of this when the world is transforming very fast, if not already transformed into an economic world that is a multipolar global economic world. And a multipolar global economic world, efficacies or benefits of which are not being achieved well because the world is based on an economic system, though multipolar, but the model of that multipolar global economic system is run by a debt-based financial system. So Islamic finance, to be honest, although has a lot of constraint and is operating, and we'll discuss where these constraints come from and how these can be addressed, also for it to manage all these new age expectations. This has to make sure that, to me, if you encapsulate all of this and the future promise and the future expectations of Islamic finance to perform in this new world of all of the stuff that we have talked about and in a multipolar global economic environment, to me, this is a massive, massive, massive third time lucky opportunity for Islamic finance to cement itself now that it is not only a system to be reckoned with, but it is a system that is going to live its actual promises in a much more stable, sustainable, new age manner, a manner that was never seen before, and a manner that was its actual mandate, its actual promise. So to me, this is the third time lucky opportunity for everybody that is linked to Islamic finance, and hence new career opportunities. Because I sit on the review panel of so many journals, and I'll show you where the gaps are and stuff like that. You know, already discussions are going on of the sort of human capital that is required, and hence the career promise on offer that is required. And we'll discuss later on what career opportunities then it brings for experts in Islamic finance or students who are interested to become a part of Islamic finance, and how they can then, in a very exciting way, project and promote and contribute into this new age version of Islamic finance. Later on, I'll tell you this is version 2.0 of Islamic finance. Now, I've tried to introduce, and there's a small article that I did a few years ago, and I call this current system of Islamic finance as a surrogate Islamic finance. Now, this is very important. The title of that article was Surrogate Islamic Finance, the Known Unknown. This is where the whole crux, the whole core of today's discussion would be, and hence the linkages on so on and so forth. Now, I don't know how many people are aware of the word surrogate. Surrogate basically in a simple English means it's a substitute or it's a replacement. It's a non-actual version or a non-real version of something. To me, I believe that the current Islamic financial system, as a result of all those constraints, plus some of the doings by our own selves. So it's a mixture. So while in the earlier section or in the earlier slides, I was telling you the realities that why Islamic finance is yet to fulfill its actual promise, and why is it still an understatement that Islamic finance is 2.3 trillion, and why still it's an understatement it is bound to grow another $500 billion or more in the next 5 years. And why is it an understatement to me that Islamic finance is here to stay where it shouldn't be, and it should have been, sustainable from the word go. I say this because the current model of Islamic finance is surrogate Islamic finance. Why I say surrogate Islamic finance? Because of the realities that the system, the real Islamic finance, never came into being. Why? Because the system in which the Islamic finance operates, the ecosystem there which Islamic finance operates, it never allows it to be the real Islamic finance. This is point number one, and this is reality. This is fact. You cannot do anything about it. This is reality. Apart from the reality is the other side too. So it's not only the ecosystem, the non-user-friendly or non-Islamic finance, real Islamic finance friendly ecosystem that is at play here. Portion of those constraints that has led real Islamic finance to come into a position where it is now a surrogate of that real Islamic finance is because a portion of it has has to do with our own doings as well. Our own doings as well. So ecosystem not being user friendly to you is one reality that you can understand. You can't do too much about it. You need to give it its proper due time for it to transform itself slowly but surely towards the modes and means of the real Islamic finance, or to produce or project and promote and operate real Islamic finance. But what the extra thing that has contributed in having what I currently say it's a surrogate Islamic financial model, be it banking, takaful, and whatever is the schemes of Islamic finance overall, or the Islamic economic system. Why I call it surrogate? Because it also has a lot of portion, or some portion of it has to, we have ourselves to blame. And this is where I want to talk about the known unknowns. We may know it, but we operate as if we don't know it. They are the known unknowns that needs to be talked about. Why we have an Islamic financial system that is not fulfilling its real Islamic financial promises. Why, even after 40 years of this industry development, from 60s onwards, let's say from 60 onwards, 63 was the first formal Islamic financial experiment back in Egypt. Why after over 40, 50 years now, we are in 2021, if a system is still facing perception issues, let alone the other issues, real or non-real, actual or man-made issues, if a system is yet to resolve its perception issues, where a common man or masses, being customers of Islamic finance, you can understand it from a non-customer, but being customers of Islamic finance, still are not clear about why Islamic finance and why not conventional finance, and what are the key differences, and why still, I mean, if you go into just Google and just go to Google Images and see criticism on Islamic finance, you would see pictures, you know, I remember, you know, there was this picture, and that I think, you know, I mean, was very disturbing to me being a proponent of Islamic finance, where there was a tasbih, and one tasbih was thrown into the collar or neck of an Islamic finance expert, and that tasbih was like a chain to him. You see, so as if, you know, this is something else, this is devious, something else is happening in the name of Islam. That was very disturbing. You see, what this has done is the current surrogate model of Islamic finance. It has some real issues that drive a current surrogate model, but it has some man-made issues too. And those man-made issues are, I refer to as the known unknown. I have no problem with the real issues. Ecosystem not being friendly to Islamic finance and enables a real Islamic finance to convert itself into unwantedly into a surrogate Islamic finance. I have no issues with the real stuff. But what I do have issues is the man-made stuff that contributes into bringing up what I call as the current surrogate version of Islamic finance. And these are the actual known unknown that I would refer to. What this has done, at least to me, when I say that I got very disturbed, what it actually tells you is that these are those things, the surrogacy of this Islamic financial system, the surrogate Islamic finance, where man-made elements are more to blame than the non-user-friendly ecosystem elements. What it has done is it has started to hurt what I call the dignity of Islamic finance. You're hurting not the perception or image, you're hurting the dignity of Islamic finance. I hope I'm clear what I say. I'm not talking about perception is different, image is different, brand is different. Dignity is much more pure, much more crucial, much more bigger in understanding. So if it were only the perception that was an issue, if it were only the brand or only the image that was an issue, you know, you can media manage that. But what it has done is, because over the last 40 odd years, people in Islamic finance, experts in Islamic finance are yet to neutralize the perception issue. It has started, if not already gone to the subconscious of the users of Islamic finance, even non-users. And I'm only talking about the region where Islamic finance is being propagated, not the Western regions as of now. Because it has gone to this subconscious, this perception issue, it has now started to hurt the dignity of Islamic finance. This is a very important point, because as humans even, If somebody hurts your dignity, your confidence collapses. If your dignity is hurt, inside you, you implode. Your confidence implodes. Your attitude implodes. Your, your excitement implodes. You see, the ruh, I mean, in Arabic or Urdu, we say the ruh. You're hurting the ruh of it, the spirit of Islamic finance, by not fixing these perception issues. It hurts me. It hurts me when people say that Islamic finance and conventional finance are no different. You pick the air from here or you bring your hand from here, it's the same thing. It hurts me. Why? Because this is not a normal statement. This is such a derogative statement about Islamic finance that it hurts the dignity of Islamic finance. This is what this surrogacy of Islamic financial system has done. This is not talking about these unknowns while knowing those unknowns is done. And these are those unknowns that are not real, that are not necessarily ecosystem related, that are classically man-made, that are classically human-made, that are classically a depiction of a serious lack of human understanding of the fitra or the real Islamic finance. Because you don't understand the real Islamic finance, then you cannot negate a surrogate Islamic finance which the ecosystem is building. But what you do is your non-understanding of real Islamic finance that contributes to materialize that surrogate version of Islamic finance. And hence, this is what my worry is. My worry is not too much about ecosystem not being user-friendly to Islamic finance. My worry is, what have we done as proponents or experts of Islamic finance to ensure that that ecosystem is fixed, so that ecosystem does not give birth to a surrogated version of Islamic finance. We've done the reverse. Because we were not able to fix that, because of our own lack of understanding of Islamic finance, the real Islamic finance, we sort of contributed to ensure that this version of Islamic finance becomes a surrogated version of Islamic finance. Why I say it's a surrogated version? 40 odd years ago, simple one-liner. People are still as confused about Islamic finance and conventional finance differences, and they cannot detangle both the systems with clarity as they were 40 odd years ago. You go outside in the market and you ask people about, the general perception would be that they don't know what Islamic finance is. They think that both the systems are same, even the customers of Islamic finance. This was the same perception 40, 30 years ago. So this is what worries me, that it has now started, or other challenges like this has started to hurt the dignity of Islamic finance. And and as I've mentioned, ecosystem is one thing that is a real constraint, but the lack of properly skilled, properly theoretically and practically underpinned Islamic financial experts or human capital is the man-made item that contributes to actualization of a non-real / surrogate Islamic finance. And what it does is, it sort of detracts us. So much confusion is there. What it has done is that it has created or supplied a massive breed of knowers of Islamic finance, knowers of Islamic finance. The Islamic financial system, this is why I'm worried about this surrogacy lasting for quite a bit, if not fixed right now. And the known unknown is that people don't know that right now the version of Islamic finance is in majority, if not all, at least 60 odd %, maybe more. I'm just being conservative. I don't want to hurt feelings over here. But in majority, Islamic financial system, which I call as a surrogate Islamic finance, is being operated, administered, and worked by knowers of Islamic finance. Knowing Islamic finance does not make you an expert in Islamic finance. When I say human capital, the rightly skilled human capital, the rightly trained, the rightly mind-setted human capital, the rightly formatted human capital, the human capital that has necessarily gone through the tarbiyah of Islamic finance, not just education of Islamic finance, They will be the believers who has the capacity to transform themselves to the visionaries of Islamic finance, not knowers of Islamic finance. Problem is that this surrogacy is an evidence that the system, which is still trying to fight its 40-year-old challenges, it's a bit of a shame that the system is still addressing not only new but 40-odd years old challenges. Perception issue is one of them that is as pervasive as anything, and I'm thinking it is going to last 40-odd years the way things are going. And if these topics are not discussed in this formal fashion that we are discussing right now, there are three categories of people. One is the knower category who knows about Islamic finance. The other is a believer and visionary category. We need the believers and visionaries in Islamic finance. A believer would be who actually understands the fitrah of Islamic finance, who actually understands the essence, the whole intricacies of Islamic finance, theoretically, practical underpinnings and whatnot, as well as has the capacity as a result to transform him or herself into a visionary status Islamic finance. Knowers will never do that. This is where the problem is. This is what the known unknowns are. People may know, but they don't know that majority of the people who label themselves as experts in Islamic finance may be just knowers of Islamic finance. Knowing Islamic finance and practicing it for another 10 years on a system that you only knew. Knowing a system and practicing it for another 10 does not make you an expert in Islamic finance. You see what I mean over here? Your base is knower system. That 10 years of practice that is based on a knower model is only going to make you a better knower. It will not transform you necessarily into a believer or a visionary status. You'll just become from a knower to a better knower of Islamic finance. That's pretty much it. And this is these knowers / better knowers of Islamic finance who get the opportunity to spend years into practicing the knower model of Islamic finance, which they carried from their background. This is where the whole core of surrogacy lies. This is what the known unknowns are. And as a result, among other confusions, model-wise, mechanic-wise, delivery-wise, operation-wise, among other challenges, old or man-made challenges, or even real challenges, what happens is that you start labeling challenges, you start labeling effects also as challenges. For example, look at these things. You point one thing to me and I will tell you this is not a challenge, this is an effect. But what happens is people look at all these points as if they are challenges. Problem, for example, problem of lender of last resort. This is not a challenge. This is an effect of the challenge that you're already actually facing. One of the challenge is, of course, ecosystem is not friendly to you. The other challenge is the rest part of the challenge is that ecosystem that is already not friendly is now carries all those knowers of Islamic finance that are allowed to operate Islamic finance. You see what I mean? So of course, if I'm not a believer or if I'm not well thought leadership wise trained or formatted into actual real Islamic economics and financial system so that I become a believer or a visionary in Islamic finance, my knower version of Islamic finance, when I'm allowed to practice, or I become, let's say, a CEO of an Islamic bank. So what happened was, and I'm being very real over here, don't want to hurt feelings, being conservative at the same time. So what happened was, I was 25 years, I did MBA in finance. I joined, for example, just to name, I don't like naming, but just for your ease, I joined Citibank, for example, classic conventional. Wow, what a great start, good salary, good position. 5 years I work in Citibank, I get a promotion. I now become the GM. Another 5 years, I get a promotion, I now become a CEO. So, and 25 years of MBA conventional finance, studying it, educating myself / formatting myself into a system, and then 15 years of successful implementation of that system. Now I'm 40 years old, And the next thing that happens is then the country that which I am operating in, it now starts embracing Islamic finance, and they want to open an Islamic finance bank. What to do? You do not have a pure individual who is so well equipped, a 40 years or even a 20 years of well equipped individual who you can go and ask him to become the CEO of this fresh full Islamic bank. What happens is that what you do is you go to the first guy who trained himself into conventional MBA finance, very well educated, grades were fantastic. This is why he straight away landed into a Citibank position. He then practiced that that education of conventional finance into a Citibank, 15 years of successful practice. And eventually what happened is the next morning he receives a phone call or an offer that because of his success in banking, they want him to be the general manager or CEO of a fresh Islamic bank. I don't want to say what will happen next. This is where the known unknown start. This is now the chain starts. So to him, when he will try and implement his own, of course, he will get trained, he will listen to such talks, he will go and attend sessions, of course, on depositors' money, by the way. He will go and attend, workshops, seminars, travel, and all that. And after 4 or 5, 10 workshops globally, where he just learned how to speak Mudaraba and Musharaka for the first ever time in his life and understand the basic of these Islamic financial contracts and the basic model, and knowing that only no riba is the main thing. Of course, when he will operate an Islamic bank under his supervision, problem of lender of last resort will be a challenge to him. He will never think this is an effect of the challenge. To him, it will be a challenge because the challenge actually lies somewhere else. That this is the effect. All of these that I'm showing: risk management, tax bias, lack of dynamic supervision, lack of government part dependency, lack of hedging instrument. These are effects. Lack of proper Sharia governance, for example. These are effects of the challenges, ecosystem real challenges, and the man-made challenge. A man-made challenge that is now being created by the knower category of experts who run the show of Islamic finance, not the believer or visionary category of Islamic finance experts. And this is where this surrogacy comes into picture. This is why, for long, observers concurred that answer lies in developing the rightly attuned human capital that is well equipped to address the given challenges while correcting perceptions. This is why people still crave for this. As a result, with time, the focus would shift from bashing practitioners to hinging hopes on educational endeavors. Now people have accepted that. People have accepted that the version of Islamic finance has to be run by predominantly knowers. Now people know that. People know this unknown now. People talk about this unknown now. People are worried that this surrogacy may start hurting the dignity of Islamic finance. People now crave that, okay, let the current Islamic financial version go, even surrogate, but with the niyyah of bringing the real Islamic finance back. But who will back the real Islamic financial system? The rightly attuned human. We don't have them right now. Let's create them. Let's create them. So funding goes in, universities are created, colleges are created, programs are created, certification, diplomas, whatnot. So much so that there are over 1,400 global institutions operating and offering Islamic finance courses, whatever capacity of those courses, PhD, degree, whatever certifications and all that. By the way, 85% are only certificate level courses, not PhD level courses or master's, postgrad and degree. So much so that these entities would be filling that vacuum. These entities, this is what I'm saying, hopes are hinged on the educational or formation bodies to give Islamic finance the supply of those believers and visionaries that the system is craving for, so that this surrogacy is finished and the real in a phase-wise manner, system comes back to its fitra and the actual results promised are achieved. So what has happened is that still, even in 2020, this is what I call as lost decades in Islamic finance. Even in 2020, 2021 version, if you look at, and my huge respect, my huge credit, my huge appreciation and to all these beautiful, esteemed Sharia scholars who made Islamic finance what it is right now. We are still relying on those scholars who are trained and modeled back in the 70s and 80s. Now, what we are doing is two things. Number one, to operate a 2021 version of Islamic finance that is not only fighting with old and current challenges in a confused manner, but also facing new expectations issues, to be operated in a world that is pandemic driven, that is technology disrupted, that is a multipolar economic world, that is going to face a UN SDG orientation, and that is going to face the havoc of climate change risks. And within climate change, there is a package of risks, including cybersecurity risks that will come. So if I want to operate this model of Islamic finance in 2021, and I still rely on myself to Sharia allow or disallow this model on a scholarship or intellectual pedigree that goes back to 70s and 80s era, don't you think I'm not doing justice to the 2021 dynamics? And number two, don't you think injustice? And number two, don't you think that I am unnecessarily overstretching those beautiful scholars, so much so that they also become relevant to the 2021 onward version of Islamic finance? You see? So while I am doing disservice or unjustified approach to a 2021 onward version of Islamic finance with its new age dynamics, but asking those beautiful, lovely, honorable Sharia scholars who have done enormous work to grow Islamic finance, huge credit to them, may Allah bless them, but then overstretching them to also be relevant equally and Sharia guide a 2021 disruptive model of Islamic finance, that is zulm on them too, and zulm on Islamic finance. So this is why we are doing this, because of this Noor sufficiency, of this Noor comfort, of this Noor driven surrogated version that has made us so comfortable, even if in this current model of Islamic finance, where we didn't realize that from 70s till 2020, at least 3 decades, we have completely lost, where we couldn't produce a young, dynamic, classically trained, modern, visionary, more relevant to 2020, 2030 dynamics, breed of Sharia scholars or Sharia experts that can Sharia orient a Jadid or a new age version of Islamic finance. This is what my worry is. There are these huge gaps to fight this new or address these new normal and possibility frontiers and show the potency of this actual Islamic finance. This is why there is not only a scholarly gap, there is not only lost decades, there is not only, a Noor-driven model rather than a believer or visionary-driven model. As a result, it has started to affect that dignity of Islam. And as what happens is that you have to also understand that the Noor model is further ignited by some other dynamics too, before I come where the opportunities are. One other point that I want to make sure, I don't know if you've noticed or not, any country that adopted Islamic finance, apart from 2 or 3 countries back in the 80s, including Pakistan, Iran, and perhaps Sudan. And by the way, Sudan has reoriented itself, if you know. Most countries, if not majority, all of them, whenever they adopted Islamic finance, they adopted a beta version. Why I say it's a beta version? because they adopted it on not a full-fledged but an experimental version. Even if you want to adopt a beta or an experimental version, the NIA should tell it it has to translate itself into a real full-fledged version. The NIA was there. Some countries showed. Malaysia is a classic example. But what it did was that this beta approach, starting Islamic finance from a Windows version, it actually supplied further fuel for the system to be driven by a knowers breed rather than believers and visionaries breed. Because a window, to be honest, in simple language, window is experimental. I don't know why this window model was not done when the countries were implementing conventional systems. I never saw a window Citibank. I never saw a Windows Standard Chartered Bank. I never saw a window HSBC or stuff like that. So this is again, something that does not make sense to me when a non-Islamic financial riba-based version, let me be very religious over here to folks who are in line with Islamic approaches, when a non-religious classic model that can take you to a war against Allah and His Prophet was implemented, that was implemented by each and everyone in a full-fledged manner. Then no beta version was done. But when you're implementing your own system that is driven by your own religious scripture, you implement it in an experimental beta version, that just, it's yet to make sense to me. But since you did that, it just shows that you were very unsure of this system. This is what at least it tells me. But since you did that, so of course an experimental version, why would I dare go and take all the burden to create classic believer or visionaries when I'm only adopting a system to check how it works, and if it works well, I'll continue with it, or a better approach, to say the least. And countries did that. When they saw that Islamic finance thrived, they shut the windows down, they shut the subsidiary models, they started transforming full-fledged bank predominantly. So if a system, when you're going to adopt it in an experimental version, of course you will prefer conventional experts, become the knowers of Islamic finance and run the Islamic show too. So all of these aspects, guys, are man-made, and this is where we are living in a surrogate version of Islamic financial system, where this Windows or beta approach has further induced or further stimulated a version that I call as a version that is knower, or a I don't want to be too harsh, but let's say a knower or a surrogate expert version driven. The other point, guys, before I go to the other sections, is the fact, and you can read those slides and I've shared it already, folks are relying on the fact that it will be the universities and educational bodies or the training centers that will eventually bring and supply the much needed human capital from the category of believers and visionaries. Folks are craving, industry is craving for that. Because you see, if you have the right human capital, that right human capital will know where the ecosystem needs to be fixed. And what will happen is, sooner or later, those rightly attuned believer and visionaries, human capital in Islamic finance, will sit at the right positions. One will become, let's say, the governor of a central bank, the other will become the finance minister, the other will become a dean of a certain institution, the other will become a head in UN, the other will become a prime minister, the other will become a president. So by time, with the help of Allah, those believers and visionaries will automatically be put in the right positions. And you don't need an army of believers and visionaries, only few good men. So all those few good, rightly attuned men will automatically, by nature, will be put into the right positions. And the constraint of non-user-friendly ecosystem will automatically start getting addressed. So even if you want to fix the non-user-friendly ecosystem for Islamic finance to show its real colors, it's not going to be adjusted or fixed automatically by itself. It is a rightly attuned human capital, the believers and visionaries that you will produce, who will then sit at the right positions with time, and they will start addressing the ecosystem issues. And within a couple of decades, you will see a version of Islamic finance that is much more promising and much more maqasid fulfilling than what is the current surrogate version is. So right now, the eyes and the hopes are hinged on these education. But guess what? Guess what? And again, a harsh reality. The moment you will start to scratch the surface of these beautiful training, educational bodies, which are being entrusted on giving you the right supply of the right human kind of human capital, not knowers, but visionaries and believers in Islamic finance. People who are responsible to create that are also surrogate experts. Surrogate experts are not only in banking or industry or practitioner. This surrogacy of experts is also there in academia, in researchers. What happens? Like I gave you the example of an MBA in finance landing into a classic, fantastic Citibank job and doing a 15 years of practice and then becoming a CEO of an Islamic bank with the other system in its blood and trying to run the Islamic financial. So, of course, in a knower category. What else? Same is applicable in the academia as well. I was just reading a Malaysian research and they surveyed over 402 faculty members from top Malaysian institutions who are running Islamic finance shows as well. 402 faculty members. Guess what? Guess what? Only 30 had an Islamic finance background. Rest of them who were actually mandated to give you a believer or visionary supply of human capital Islamic finance were by themselves from conventional backgrounds, were by themselves beta versions, were by themselves surrogate experts. This is where the danger is. The danger is no more industry practices or ecosystem, because industry is relying sooner or later, universities, education bodies will give you the right human capital. But when you go to the educational institutions and training centers, people who are running the show and who are mandated to give you the right supply themselves are surrogate experts. This is where my worry is. This is where the human capital worry is. People training human capital, people creating those human capital, people formatting that human capital are surrogate experts themselves. So what to expect then? What to expect? And this is where the whole vacuum is. Not only, this is why decades are lost. There is a reason to all this madness. There is a method to all this madness. It doesn't happen by itself. This is the human factor. This is the man-made constraints. Real constraints, you can't do too much about it. Man-made constraints. This is where the surrogate, this is the known unknowns. People don't talk too much about it, but we should. These are those known unknowns responsible for the surrogate version, which I call of Islamic finance. But as I mentioned, and look at this, for example. I mean, you have number of institutions, you have number of certifying issuing bodies. Look at this research work, 1,786, 2,515 in scientific journals, 1,786 just in 2020 in peer-reviewed journals. Look at what the topics are. You know, governance, takaful, sukuk, CSR, Islamic finance. These are all topics that are very superficial, that are 7th or 8th layer of topics. I'm yet to convince people on my first level of Islamic finance understanding, and my research world, as if my other 5 levels are already clear, and I can, Sharia governance is a 6th or 7th layer of Islamic finance understanding. I am hardly properly aware and clear about the first 2 levels. I don't even know the difference of Islamic and conventional finance. I'm facing perception issues, and you are doing research of real high-end stuff. What do I have to do with capital markets? Why publish 12 papers in capital markets where people are still facing? I'm not saying it's not a good topic. Do that, but do so in a rightly phased manner. Address the core issues first. There are still standing those issues since 40 odd years, and you're talking about green finance. You're talking about, you know, I mean, fancy names like blue economy and all that. What's going on over here? And look at this, for example. Number of financial institutions are more, but number of Sharia scholars running that financial institutions are less. Massive gap, as I've mentioned. So these known unknowns of surrogacies are at the bedrock of this whole human capital and the surrogacy of Islamic finance. Again, my submission would be that all of these challenges, including the ecosystem challenges, can be addressed by believers and visionaries and not knowers only. The former two shall cover the constraints of the system support problems. They will sit on the right positions automatically and fix the ecosystem issues. And for the next generation, they have to be thinkers, they have to be scholars. If you see, bring back philosophy in PhD. PhD right now is just specialization. What are you a PhD? Islamic finance. My specialization in Islamic finance, and I'm called myself a doctor. But do you know the philosophy of Islamic finance? Bring the philosophy of PhD back into PhD. Don't just go for specialization. Right now, PhD is just specialization driven. Bring the philosophy back into it. Bring the visionary. Remember, if I want to call myself an Islamic finance scholar or expert, particularly a PhD, I have to have the power and capacity to understand and link Islamic finance, current and future wise as well, in multiple ways. I should know how to link it with politics. I should know how to link it with mathematics. I should know how to link it with spiritualism. I should know how to link it with theology. I should know how to link it with comparative religions. I should know how to link it with economy. I should know how to link it with risk management. I should know how to link with different facets. This is what a definition of scholar is, that it can link its discipline in 8 to 10 wide angles and connect each an angle and then give you a solution or policy prescription that this is how the system is going to death, and on top of it in a very hermeneutical fashion. Problem is, surrogacy is not only in the industry, but also more dangerously in the academia as well. This is where the danger lies, and hence the surrogacy of Islamic finance in general. It beats me, guys, where people start talking about Islamic finance as if it's so ideal that it is not doing this, it is not doing that. It is Islamic finance. Remember, don't expect an Islamic bank to give you solutions which the government should give you. Islamic banking is a luxury item per se. You see, banking is not a basic need fulfillment item. Number two, I do not understand why people think that Islamic banking or finance should be different or be more ideal when the model of Islam in general. You see, Islamic finance, the model of Islamic finance should or cannot be different from the model of Islam we are following in 2021. It has to go line in line. So even if you still have to criticize Islamic banking, remember, it can be not different from the model of overall Islam that the Ummah is following. It has to be line in line. So if Islamic finance is not showing you the ideal status, it means indirectly you're saying Islam is not following in the ideal way. Simple as that, because Islamic finance comes from the model of Islam that you're using right now. And if you still want to criticize more, remember, you need to shut your mouth, because everything that comes to you as a product has a Sharia approval stamping on it. As long as I get that approval, I'm okay, because I'm the end user. This question of was it really Islamic financial product or was it a surrogate Islamic financial product is not the customer's question. At the accountability day, I'm not going to be asked this question, but what I'm going to be asked this question as an expert: had you known this, or did you know this, why you didn't do anything about it, about the surrogacy? So guys, these are those harsh realities, unknown knowns or known unknowns of surrogate Islamic finance, and what factors that are driving those surrogate Islamic finance. Remember, it's more man-made than real ecosystem issues. Ecosystem issues can only be fixed when you have the right people. And of course, I label it the version 2 of Islamic finance, and this is where the career opportunities are, guys. You have to think about Islamic finance and become an expert that is expert on Islamic finance version 2. Become an Islamic finance expert now from the angle of technology. Become an Islamic finance or career in Islamic finance, very proactive career. I'm telling you, next 5 years, anybody who comes into Islamic finance from the background of technology solutions, fintech, or from the background of climate change, mark my words, next 5 years, if anybody, Islamic finance is going to boom. There was an estimate that, of course, pre-COVID estimate, that in GCC alone, 100,000 new jobs of Islamic finance would be created, and 50% of that would be predominantly taken by the youth, the young, the new millennials, the younger folks, tech-savvy people. So anybody who's thinking of developing a career in Islamic finance, which is a very promising industry, which needs this human capital, a believer, a visionary human capital, not a knower one. Anybody who's a believer will triumph in Islam, will dictate, will be a mover and shaker in this industry, will set the trends. And anybody who is on top of it, either a technology oriented expert in Islamic finance or a climate change focused expert in Islamic finance, or I don't want to call UN SDGs expert, because I believe that UN SDGs is a downscaled version of overall halal economy, which Islamic finance is a part of. I mean, guess what? Look at this. Another thing that came into my mind, look at halal economy. So sad. This is again, signifies the surrogacy or confused state of affairs, that what we did was that we have a halal economy. We broke it into two. One is called halal industry. The other is called Islamic finance. Halal industry is over 3 trillion. Islamic finance 2.3 trillion. Rather than they should be one and the same thing, they are broken into two, understood differently. One is growing in this trajectory. The other is going in this trajectory. Man, oh man. So when you talk about halal industry, your mind automatically goes to food and all this stuff, not in the halal finance, which already is Islamic finance. And by the way, halal finance is a prerequisite of halal consumption. One and the same thing, unfortunately, broken into two. And then when these new names comes in circular or green or even purple, white, whatever, rainbow economy and whatnot, or social responsible finance or ethical finance or whatever it is, these fancy names, they're actually downscaled version of Islamic economic or halal economic and financial system. And remember, guys, when you want to come into Islamic finance, there is massive career opportunities. People don't understand this. I do understand because I operate it. I've done this in Oman, and I know it inside out, where these soft belly buttons are, this pulse, the pulse. And I'm telling you, you don't know what the system is craving. The system is only craving the right expert. And guess what? In just few years' time, if you are rightly attuned with the right mindset, with technology and climate change in focus, man, oh man, time is yours. Time is yours for the taking, and you'll put up a fantastic show. And who knows that the next time I'll be, listening to one of your sermons, like what is happening right now. So with this, I would like to end this session, and I hope that some thought-provoking moot points have been discussed, guys. And we need believers, no more knowers and no more surrogates. We need believers and visionaries of Islamic finance, because we have to address cybersecurity risk, we have to address climate change risk, we have to address new age multipolar economic risks in a tightly globalized world. And this exciting times ahead, guys. Anybody who understood this will know that there is a lot of excitement and opportunity on offer. When there is vacuum, there is more rate of return to capital, is what I'm saying. Thank you very much.